when you first go into a short session, you're leaving your eyes open, and what is here for you? Well, typically we're conditioned to be in thoughts. So if I was to give an example, I would say, what is happening with this meditation? What am I even doing with these people? But really, uh, you're just having thoughts, right? I wonder what I'm going to do today. Probably go meet up with my mom. I wonder if I'm nervous about that. I don't know, maybe. Um, so I'm in these thoughts, right? And that's kind of where I'm psychically located. But you can have awareness of thoughts. So if I'm resting here and I'm just noticing any thoughts, oh, I'm having thoughts about what I'm going to do today. You saw that, yes or no? Anybody not able to see their thoughts? To notice what kind of thoughts, narrations, images, song in your head, the movement. That's the internal movement, right? So called. If you're able to just do that, just have awareness of thoughts, you're already in a different phase of the mind. So look at the ants. No offense to the ants. I love the ants so much, actually. But they're really on a mission. If I was to say, hey, ant, um, can you stop serving the queen for a second or whatever you're doing and pay attention to me so I could teach you a breath meditation? The ant would not stop. I'm on a mission. I don't want to hear all this woo woo stuff right now. So this is like that. We are on missions in this collective environment, in this conditioned environment. Politicians are on missions, leaders are on missions, people driving like crazy to get to work are on a mission. And if you get in the way, guess what you're going to get? The cuckoo of awareness. So, everybody understanding that, right? How we can psychically isolate ourselves, and that becomes emotive too. There are intense feelings associated with it. Get out of my way, I'm on a mission. And the ant is like, get out of my way, I'm going to crawl over you, I don't care. Steps on the other ant with like 10 legs, 10 feet in their face. How many ants? How many legs ants have? I think, yeah, 6. Yeah, 6 feet. That's more than two. You know. So when an ant gets stepped on, it's 6 times over. But anyway, this is what's happening, right? And we get very clunky because we get trapped in these psychic isolations, and we essentially steamroll. We stiff arm our way through anything at that point. And even people are trying to tell us some positive news or give us a gift or something. No, no, I can't right now. I'm too busy. That's all making sense. Psychic isolation, right? It's not discussed so much, but it's part of our science. When you engage with an introspection, it's kind of like you're using a microscope or a telescope, except you're using awareness, which is just a scope. The scope, your lens, you're seeing your thoughts now because you're allowing them, just like when you look in a microscope, you're just allowing the specimen to do what it's doing while you observe. Well, just like that, let your thoughts do what they do. If they're evil thoughts, destructive thoughts, let them come and go. It's when we give them extra momentum, extra energy, that's when those thoughts can be a problem. And you may even follow through on what these thoughts are saying instead of just letting them come and go. See why psychic unbinding, why that cognitive diffusion is so beneficial for us? And people say, all the time, uh, Why introduce Dzogchen like this without any Nundro preliminaries and without a strong Dharma background sometimes and things like that? Well, they introduce cognitive therapy to you, which is the same thing. Increased visibility will never be a risk, okay? Don't take this for anything more than it is. You're just increasing the visibility of your mind and breaking out of isolations. There's nothing harmful about that. Maybe in other practices, tantric practices, there could be harm, and the way people present Dzogchen sometimes with a really strong emphasis on Guru Yoga could be harmful. But the way it's presented in this group, there's no harm in increased visibility. So that's one phase when we come here for the 10-minute sessions, all right? You can be in your thoughts or you can notice what thoughts are here in the 10 minutes. So I just see the question here. Oza, do you feel that the fact that nothing specific observes that which is also not something is the essence of emptiness? All right. We're going to slowly build up here, okay? We're just trying to make this accessible for the people who are just getting into the meditations and things like that. Um, so we want all this to be accessible. If there's any point in which I'm speaking, something becomes inaccessible to you. For example, if I say, "Hey, just rest in Dharmakaya emptiness," you're gonna be like, "What?" A lot of you. Now, some of you know exactly that that's synonymous with awareness. That's synonymous with pure presence. No problem. But the mind tends to overcomplicate things. So remember why it's so crucial. The thoughts and the thought isolation is very, very troublesome for you. It causes a lot of disharmony. It causes anger. It causes really crazy cycles of desire and things like that, pride and jealousy. So we have about 30 to 50,000 thoughts per day. I always cite that statistic from Fred Luskin, and others have those stats. So it's not just single. 90% of those are repetitive, and then probably 80% are negative. See why it's very, very useful to break out of our thought patterns of that. It's just cycling thoughts. And if you yourself don't want to believe you, yeah, don't want to believe me or believe you, then you can verify, you can test, you can observe your own mind. Is this the same thought that I had 6 hours ago or yesterday or an hour ago? Yes, and in many cases, when practitioners have observed their own mind, they have found that this is repetitive. And the worst is your moods, your depression, your sadness is repetitive. So, in that regard, it can be tormenting. Here I am again in this cycle, and da 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 da. All right? So, that brings us to the second thing, that when you're in a short session, where you could be. Maybe I'm in a mood. Maybe I feel sick, or maybe I feel nervous or something like that. So I'm in a kind of mood now. And somebody says, "Hey, Dawai, why don't you pay attention to your breath? Take a deep breath." I can't right now. I'm nervous. Short breaths, stressful breaths, right? So, okay, Dawai, just be here with it for 10 minutes. Okay, so I'm here. I'm crunched up. My shoulders are crunched. My neck is crunched. I have tension throughout my body, and I'm not doing anything about that. But I'm again isolated, right? Now, instead of vivid thoughts, I'm isolated in a mood. It's a little bit more vague. It's a little bit more subtle where my isolation is, but it's still cognizance. It's still cognition. Just like the thoughts. I'm stuck in cognition. I'm stuck in cognition. Either way. So I'm stuck in this nervousness, this anxiety, and then I just let it be. It has to go away. It cannot last forever. So in cognitive science, for example, Dr. Harry Berry has these statistics: 90% success rate with allowing things to be. Your panic, your anxiety will alleviate within 10 minutes or so. Whereas if you perpetuated it, if you didn't let it be, if you kept on thinking about it, it would last over an hour, and sometimes days. These things could last years. So think of when you lose somebody or something like that. That's just holding a thought unnaturally. It's nothing to blame anybody about, of course not. But that's what's happening there, as a matter of scientific observation almost, or introspection, contemplative science. We see that. You must hold something, some idea, some belief, and then you must renew it in order to have your troubles, right? So these are the isolations. We can be in moods. I'm in a bad mood today. Oh, what's wrong? All this stuff is wrong. I'm in a bad mood today. And you'll have to keep on reminding yourself of that, or else your bad mood might leave you. You don't want that. You don't want your bad mood to go away, do you? No, so keep kicking yourself in the butt. Make sure it's still there. That's what we do anyway. So, uh, this is also what happens. So there are two kinds of isolation that I've described so far: the thought uh, and the emotional, right? Essentially, the emotion. So the third one is the body. Is this a real question, Dondo? Why don't we want bad moods to leave? Uh, it, there could be many answers for that actually, that are probably better than what I could give, because there are lots of studies on negative bias, why we lean into negativity. It's a very curious thing. I think it has to do with survival and the four F's of psychology of the reptilian mind and of our karmic conditioning. From a dharmic point of view, it would be the very basis of dependent origination. There has to do with our ignorance and our self-grasping. Bad moods typically are perpetuated because of self-grasping, because we're not getting something the way we want it, things like that. Okay, but yeah, maybe you'll get some better answers. Why we perpetuate, why we have a negative bias? It's just samsara, I guess. You know. Yeah. And we really get hooked on those. We justify lots of things. We justify being sick. Look at a lot of people that fake sickness. Why would you ever do that? We don't know. It just happens. People get want it for different reasons. They do that kind of thing. I think it's normal. Children do that when they want attention and things like that. So this must be perpetuated though with thoughts. This is what we know about this particular psychic isolation, or cognizant, isolated cognizance, we can say. It's a pretty good term. Like a whirlpool in the ocean. It's an isolated cognizance. Being in your thoughts, being in the mood, and also holding a perspective. Let's say you've been meditating for a long time. I'm incorporating the five aggregates a little bit here. So let's say you've been practicing meditation for a long time. You feel enlightened. You feel, man, I'm pretty like somatically cleared. I'm pretty mentally cleared. Um, so you're sort of holding this perspective, like, yeah, I'm not enlightened, dude. Me, the enlightened one, dude. And then when you talk to people, you're assuming that, yeah, here I am, the enlightened one, talking to somebody. So it's a kind of not many thoughts there, not much mood there, but it's a perspective. You understand? You could go to the complete opposite of that and say, I don't believe in enlightenment. That is a bunch of crap. And you're not very having any thoughts, but you're kind of having this skeptical disposition, this perspective. And then maybe Choku says to you, hey, you can really enlighten the mind. And you're holding this perspective like, yeah, okay, Choku, I believe you. Sure. It's a perspective. It's not really deeper than that a lot of times. And we can hold these perspectives for long, long times. Nationalism is a great example. You can be very proud of your country. That's a kind of perspective that you're holding. You can see people marching at restaurants together, all holding the same perspectives. Um, Religious hierarchy, racial hierarchy is a perspective. It's very subtle. I think Israel's a great example of that. They have this disposition, and if you're from Israel or if you're watching and you like Israel, I'm sorry, but I cannot agree with that country at all. It's in their constitution to hate others who are not, you know, of their country. It's written in black and white. I mean, we can ignore that. I'm not trying to ruffle any feathers, but that's a hierarchical disposition based on nationalism. It happens not just from Israel. It happens, lots of different countries and lots of different religions. We're Christians, so we have the right answer. You have the wrong answer, right? It's a little bit of a perspective that we hold, that people can hold, and it sucks because all beings are each other's teachers and are each other's relatives and friends and family. Yet all these things divide us. It could even be a football team or a basketball team. You know, America has this disposition too, not just Israel. Israel is probably a great example of extreme fanatical nationalism. You uh, I'll venture to say fascism at this point, but uh, that America has gotten very fascist too many times, and very um, well prideful in their nationalism. And then you can have nationalism, I suppose, that's less destructive, like the Tibetans, but they have gotten in many wars too. So this nationalism can actually engage you into wars and things like that, and have you being racist and things, and have you with the religious discrimination. I know that's a sensitive topic, but these are perspectives that we take up, and I just want you to know them, to see them, because visibility is enough. You don't have to do anything about it. If there's oppression in this world and you can't do anything about it, visibility is enough, okay? Just knowing and just us speaking about it like this openly is enough. If these kinds of discussions give you stress, eh, that's probably your empathy, your compassion, which is great, better than apathy and destruction. But at the same time, we should be able to discuss these things without our emotions conquering us and just put a flag in the ground. This is wrong, right? And you don't even have to hold a perspective that I'm against extreme nationalism or extreme religious fanaticism. You just can objectively state, like a scientist, religious fanaticism is probably destructive for the mind. Very easy like that. Extreme nationalism, those kinds of perspectives are very destructive for the mind. Just knowing that. Oh, that's interesting. Anthony's comparing nationalism to a collective ego. Very interesting. Yeah. And I want to say there's some kind of healthy nationalism to be, happy about your country, your culture, and things like that. Um, yeah, so I don't want to completely say that. Yeah, maybe that's more patriotism, isn't it? So interesting topic to get into, but it has a lot to do with the mind. Those are cultural zeitgeists that kidnap the mind very easily, because that's another deep psychological thing that we do. When we see groups doing the same things, we all start dressing the same. We all start adopting the same language and whatnot, and less free thinkers are popping out of that kind of structure. All right, so I've gone into perspective, how we can isolate ourselves into perspectives, cultural perspectives. Um, those are a little bit less localized than emotions and thoughts, but still psychic isolations, cognitive, isolated cognizance. I'm going to use that new term, okay? And so, uh, obviously, well, for some of you, it may be obvious, I'm going through the four foundations of mindfulness. So, the third is the body. We can actually have this cognitive isolation into the body because the body is also alive, living, doing stuff. And if you stub your toe, for example, and you say, toe, and then you start isolating yourself into the vibrations of that toe. You've seen that, right? You've seen yourself do that. Very good. So now you know what it's like. Um, to isolate yourself into thoughts, to isolate yourself into emotional energy and bodily energy. Internal stuff is very difficult. If you have some kind of internal pain, you don't know what it is, it's it's very difficult not to isolate yourself into that. But that isolation is not going to help your blood flow. It's not going to help your oxygen delivery and your T helper cells create white blood cells for the healing. It's not going to help any of that. That isolation is going to create a tension there. So if you can allow that the vibrations of that injury or that sickness best you can without contracting into it, then in my opinion, this will be better, okay? And again, you don't have to do anything for any of these. I'm just describing to you all the different ways that we can isolate ourselves. Um, and so I believe Drew is still here or no? Yes. So Drew, it kind of inspired this because everybody, a lot of people deal with the neck and the head pain going up the back of the head, right, and the shoulders. This is a very sensitive area where your head is connected to your torso and the nervous system, the pineal gland, the central hub of the nervous system is connecting to the rest of your body there. So that's why I say when we do our short sessions, these are all the things that you're bringing into presence. You don't have to deliberately bring them in. They're already here within pure presence. So for some of you, it may be like taking a bath. Your whole body, including that neck and that head tension, is within awareness right now. And you're allowing it some time to relieve, for that contraction to alleviate. So, just like a fist, how you would allow it to just by not doing anything, and in fact, you're stopping the doing because it takes doing to clench a fist. Power to the people. But anyway, so when you clenching that fist is a doing, and then you stop doing, and there's a release. That's exactly what's happening in our necks right now, or most of the time. And so there's absolutely nothing to do about it. No moving around, all this stuff. You could actually hurt yourself if you do that rolling the neck thing too fast. Um, Rolling the neck is very, very good in its proper context. Okay, but when we're doing the short sessions, that's why they say Anu yoga, the eighth dhyana, where you do tons of yoga, neck rolling, you name it, shoulder rolling, and much more intense yoga, is the eighth dhyana. Dzogchen is the ninth dhyana. They say in Anu yoga, it takes many lifetimes to achieve liberation using energy practices in yoga. But in Dzogchen, one lifetime you can have liberation. Why? Because it's easier to release that tension in your neck by allowing it to just be here than it is by doing 10 cycles of extreme yoga while you're holding your breath and whatever else, breaking your kneecaps. So, big difference here between Anu Yoga and Ati Yoga, the eighth and the ninth dhyana. And in 1 through 8, you're doing stuff. In the ninth dhyana, you're not doing anything anymore. Doing is antithetical to liberation, to self liberation. You cannot have cessation or cognitive diffusion if you're doing something. Right? And that doesn't mean I can go grab a cup of water right now and not be doing anything. So there's a slight
So,
paradox in that. Yeah,
Dawai, I
go
had
ahead.
a little question. It just came up when you mentioned that. Uh, I wonder if that's why their Dzogchen is better for our times right now is because maybe back a long time ago they weren't doing as much as we're doing now. We're already doing so much with daily lives
Mm.
and jobs and stuff. I wonder if I wonder if that's just a
Yeah,
thought that I'm having.
yeah, certainly. There's a lot more preoccupation. The minds are way speedier. That's what we can pretty much say that for sure. That it's a little bit more materialistic now, um, and the minds are much speedier. So what we have is, to me, degenerate times. This Kali Yuga that we're in, that's ending. It's a long run that's ending now and going into the golden age, at least according to Dharmic cosmology. But as it ends, it's like water going down the toilet. It's getting denser. So you have all the information that used to be everywhere. Now it's just on the internet servers, like condensed. You have all the forests turning into cities. They're turning everything's getting denser. You see, including the minds, and that's why we don't see the true power of the mind because we're contracted into these dense isolations. That's why I want you all to break out of the isolations. You understand? Whole nother world when you start to break out of that density. So you're absolutely right, and I hope many more Dzogchen guides pop up, and we all the yogis here end up continuing to benefit. I think each of you is at that level of being, if not now, then, as you mature, whatever. Um, you've met with Dzogchen. Traditionally, that's considered, of epic karmic proportions. Like you've done something extremely good to meet with these teachings. And that means you are a sovereign monarch. You are beyond the gods. The gods venerate you according to the Dhamma, right? So, you can inject that into your ego if you want to, but it's more to just let you know how special it is when we connect with Dzogchen, at least according to the Dharma text. Yes, and then Yeshi has here the Yuga cycle. And by the way, what does 4,320,000 equal? 9. Okay, very good. All right, and so the last psychic isolation that we can experience is the environment. Just like a cat gets very enticed by the mouse, we can isolate into focus itself. Like if I'm focusing on a cup and I really want that cup and I have some dreams about it and things, well, I'm isolating into the three spheres of conception, that subject, action, object trichotomy. Okay? So those are the four foundations of mindfulness and the five aggregates: conditioned consciousness, form, mental formations. Everything is in there. And how in these 10-minute sits, where are you? Where are you isolated into? Or are you isolated? See, the one thing that does not ever isolate is awareness. That's what holds all the isolations. It's the very basis for any experiential movement, any consciousness, okay? So I think you got it. That's why we get pointed to the nature of mind. It's not just awareness. Awareness is like a placeholder. When you and I have a one on one, or you and any authentic awareness holder, and you have an aha moment and you see something there, cognizance recognizing cognizance, then that should become your new best friend. Because that's the one place that's never going to be trapped, ensnared, damaged, hurt, sick, anything. All right, everybody? Making sense, yeah? And it's going to come off a little bit different if you've never recognized awareness or the nature of mind. If you're not familiar with that Rangshin, that nature of mind, the, the cognizance that permeates all other cognizance. If you're unsure about it or you haven't been introduced, then this whole explanation may logically add up, but you're not going to be able to access it because you'll say, "Oh yeah, I know I can get isolated in my thoughts," and then as you're saying that, you're isolated in your thoughts. You'll you'll get isolated into your thoughts about isolation of thoughts. See, the mind is a very tricky place. All right, so now that I've gone over those, I just want to also include the eight consciousnesses because we got all this stuff. We got our mental mind and getting stuck on thoughts, getting stuck on emotions. That's the sixth consciousness. But there's also, you can be isolated into a feeling of a watcher, a thinker. And that's kind of where Oza, I believe, in the beginning was going into, well, what about emptiness? Well, it's great if you're stuck in your thoughts. Now you're observing your thoughts. Wow, I'm having a lot of anxiety about what I'm going to do today. But now, who is the one having that observation of the thoughts? You see, so there's a third layer there. That's the conditioned self. That's the watcher, the thinker, the stinker, whatever you want to call it, the feeler, the one who's offended, the one who's offending, the one who's mad, the one who's sad. this feeling of me sitting right now, listening, hearing words, a reference point. Yeah. And so that's another psychic isolation. That's another cognitive isolation. Okay. We can be in that with very little thoughts, very little emotions, but still have a feeling of anchoring into separability. And as you trust awareness, that also begins to alleviate and soften. So that isolation, the very root of all suffering, is starting to alleviate as well, starting to come apart. So it's contracted and then it's starting to soften apart. Okay, back into spaciousness. Yes, and with that, all your karmic seeds are being softened too. All that karmic momentum has no basis anymore. It needs a reference point in order for karmic cycles to occur. Just like a whirlpool needs that momentum, that center point. Okay, everybody. Well, thank you for letting me present that. I feel like we don't get into the mechanics much of our mind, and the Trengu Rinpoche text that we're reading is all about that. And I wanted to correlate it to our short sessions so that when you come here for these short sessions, you know what's going on, right? You know where you're located. Which country are you located in? The country of your thoughts, the country of your emotions, the country of your body, right? Country of the environment. So this can all be truly fascinating stuff. It's like being a scientist and you're having a microscope, a telescope type device where you could see everything about the mind and your reality. It's fascinating. Okay, Azza, yes,
Am I audible now? Okay. Yes, I
yes.
am. I want to ask, since this was a very broad and beneficial overview, in my opinion, but I want to say, where do the mental factors get into, like, fit into this? Because it's said that they kind of observe what the minds observe, the like aspects of the minds observe. But other than that, I don't really know how they correlate to these. So I wanted to ask.
Well, listen. Go ahead and copy and paste the 52. I think it is mental factors.
Should I?
Anybody.
Okay.
So you see how that was a very generalized question, right?
Yeah, since we kind of did like a broad overview as well, I wanted to ask a broad question to that, if
Yeah.
that's okay.
Okay, but the question you just asked me was essentially an invalid question.
Oh,
You said how does the mental formations fit in? I just explained a whole bunch of mental formations. Did go ahead. I'll paste it. Okay, I'm gonna paste what the 52 mental formations
I
are.
found that. I think this is okay. It was sent, I think.
I'm not trying to offend you. It's just it's an invalid question because I already went through contact, feeling, perception. We went on a whole thing on perception. So you're basically saying, how does perception fit into this talk that you just had?
No, yeah, okay, that makes sense. I meant kind of like the concept of mental formations. I think because like, are they separate from the minds, or are they kind of in the concept of it kind of
My
equal?
friend, you're just
Yeah,
asking
maybe
questions
it's
just to ask questions now.
okay.
Yeah, really. What does your heart desire right now?
What does my heart desire? I think
As
I was
far
a
as
bit confused about that topic, but that's okay. Can I continue with another?
no, but when we sit here in the short sessions, there are all these things here for us, all these various isolations, emotional. We can get stuck in thoughts. We can get stuck in our own greed, in our own pride, in our own jealousy. So, do you have a question about that? How we can get stuck in thoughts?
No, yeah, I think that makes sense. Okay. Yeah, I can kind of see it now when it's described like that. I think I was kind of uh, not understanding the meaning of the formations. But yeah,
Okay.
that fits in. We already talked of it. That's okay.
Yeah, if it's helpful to define mental formations, um, as you see there with the list, those are constructs. Okay, they come about through conditioning. So I have to program together a construct. For example, greed is a construct that's made from self-grasping, from sensory constructs. I have to create like maybe I really like apple juice. I have to create the apple. I have to create the juice. I have to create the idea, the taste sensations. I have to associate. So it becomes a construct. Greed is a construct, you see? And so mental formations can be constructs, but they can also be just little fly thoughts too. But every thought is going to be essentially a construct until you start to uh, abide in pure presence. And until you allow pure presence, then the thoughts have less weight. They have less. Every word that you're speaking, every word that I'm speaking, for example, word and speaking, those are constructs. Word has more to it. It has what do they call it when you break the files? A file tree, right? It has a whole file tree to it. Just the word word that we have to assign, we have to grasp. So, and how are those built up? These are all things that will be revealed within awareness. You start to see all the file trees.
Thank you. Yes, that makes sense. So, concerning topic.
And
Do
I'd
you
say at
also?
the base, and look at Christoph Koch and maybe others like well, a lot of physicists that deal with consciousness. I suppose Donald Hoffman and some of the ones I would name are a little bit kind of popular. There are many scientists out there that are interesting. So don't let me sway you into any direction. But when you start to, I think Christoph Koch was one of the ones talking about how single cell organisms are living intelligence. That's consciousness there. So how does a mental formation initiate? And it's a very first stage. I would say it's very much like a single cell organism.
Yeah, that makes sense. But do you think the consciousness are like prior to those, or are they also constructs, just like the mental factors?
There's always the pure basis of consciousness, and as soon as we take that and twist it into something, there's conditioning. So then you have first you have ignorance of the pure basis, which is a necessity for dependent origination and karma and conditioning. So you need to ignore the fact that it's already perfect and one. And so you start off the whole thing by creating a me and you, like a single cell organism does. And then fabrications and conditioned consciousness arise from that, according to the 12 links of dependent origination. And I would agree.
Oh, that makes sense. Okay, okay. Thank you,
Hmm.
thank you. Awesome.
And way to accept that challenge. I know I challenge you a little bit, and you're one of the best I've ever seen at accepting those challenges, seeing how you yourself, I just got to put that out there. Ozo can react any way. He'll get upset, even. I'm not saying that Ozo got upset, but if Ozo was to get upset, they would be able to see it first. It's pretty amazing when you're working with people like that. Like, oh, I saw how I got upset by what you said, and then also trusting me, like maybe I could be more delicate with my speech. So awareness is teaching me, it's teaching Oza. You see, that's how to build a healthy relationship right there. And you have your insight and you trust each other. You're gonna see your bullshit. I'm gonna see my bullshit. But Oza, I'm just very proud of you because the way you can reflect and correct, the way you can stay in the presence is amazing. It's very good.
Well, thank you. Yes, I think that's a very good benefit of this group and for like socially too, since we
Mhm.
don't need to be lecturing each other constantly if we want to fix anything. And there's a trust that it will be kind of be fixed by itself, I suppose, and I think that's very socially awesome. I guess.
Socially awesome.
Yes.
I imagine Ozza would be a great teacher too, huh?
Maybe.
Further down the line, maybe.
Yes, yes,
So
yes. Thank you. Thank you.
yeah, and then yes, you also put a definition of mental formations are defined as the aspects of the mind that apprehend particular qualities of an object. Yeah, there's probably never going to be a thought that you have that isn't associated with an object. If you could come up with a thought or even a word that's not associated with an object, I've done this. I've found very few. Like love is probably a close one. Love can be non dual without an object. But Sanskrit words, you can find Sanskrit words like om, right? Very non dual, not based on a sense object. But most thoughts that you ever have will always be about some object. Very good. Wow. We really went in on this session. I can appreciate that. You know me, I'm a little insistent when we do our short sessions that everybody is pretty much everybody. There may be a few people to get a pass, but everybody should be waking up together. We're all gonna wake up together, okay? We're not leaving anybody behind. As long as they're here in this group, they're here for some reason. And that means that we're gonna try to pull everybody out of the water, all right? And I know it's not always happy and fluffy. That's not Dzogchen. Dzogchen isn't always fluffy. Although it can be quite fluffy. So, all right. Very good. I'll end the session here then. These gatherings are considered very powerful, very meritorious. And my aspiration is that we become so strong that people with addictions can come here and start to get the support that they need through this awareness practice and the friendships here, where they can overcome these, even the strongest psychological entrapments and isolations. Um, this is what it takes to come out of addiction, come out of trauma, come out of hate and things. You need to be around people. It's really, I mean, I guess you could do it on your own, but it'd be very difficult. So the safer we can make this, the more inclusive, the more you all show each other love and respect, we can be that place. All right, everybody, imagine if this is a place where somebody can come and be free of their addiction or their trauma or their abuse, really. And if we stick together and don't compartmentalize ourselves, we can help each other like that. But if we get compartmentalized, it's going to be very difficult to overcome our stuff. We need that Sangha aspect, the friendship aspect, okay? So we all trust each other, trust our awareness practice to teach us, and we'll continue to have a really powerful support for people like that, okay? And not hurt each other anymore, right? Yeah, Ty?
Would you mind? Would you have time for a one-on-one, Dawai?
Oh, yes, I do. You can go into the MO2 room, okay?
Okay. Do I just do that from the? I'm never. I
Yes.
know. I don't know how to. Okay. Thank you, Yeshu.
Yeah, it's just like this room, except less letters. All right, so uh, from this gathering, any merit, any good that has come about, there are beings in this very presence that are suffering, and we dedicate it all to them. And deep out to you, everybody. I hope you have a beautiful day.